high expectations for Irv Smith Jr., the second year Minnesota Vikings player coming out of Alabama, second round draft pick in 2019. Irv Smith Jr. is elite. I am excited to see what Irv Smith Jr. can do with the Minnesota Vikings. He was implemented a lot more in the Minnesota Vikings offense this year than he was last year, of course, because Rick Spielman doesn't like to play rookies. Anyways, Irv Smith Jr. is a great blocking tight end. He can run routes. He can make plays after the catch. He can catch contested catches too. Irv Smith Jr. is a great tight end in what you want in 2020. Of course, Kyle Rudolph is by far better because of how Kyle Rudolph can catch and how he can actually block still. But Irv Smith Jr., he is the future for the Minnesota Vikings team right there. Kyle Rudolph is 30-some years old. He probably won't be with the league after this contract. His contract is up in, I think, 2023. I might be wrong about that, but I think his contract is up in 2023. After that, Irv Smith Jr. and Tyler Conklin are going to be our starting tight ends. Now we're going to see how Tyler Conklin does play, but Irv Smith Jr. is great. Irv Smith Jr. is amazing and what you want in the NFL. You need your tight end to be an X factor for your offense. You need this to be the case. Now, Kyle Rudolph has been an X factor for the Vikings offense throughout his whole career. I mean, Kyle Rudolph is elite. Kyle Rudolph is great. Of course, all the balls, over 75% of plays go to Adam Thielen, go to Justin Jefferson, and Dalvin Cook. Over 75% of your plays go to those three players. You need those extra plays. You need to design those extra plays to go for those other guys. Now, of course, Alexander Madison is one of those guys who probably takes up another 5% of the plays. But anyways, you need those plays to go to those extra guys. We have Chad Beebe. I wouldn't rely on him to always make big plays. BC, again, those two are great players. They're great slot wide receivers. I wouldn't rely on them to make big plays also. I'm talking about third down plays. You probably don't want to throw to those two guys on third down. You can get a first down maybe in second down or something. I wouldn't rely on those guys to be in the red zone used or getting first downs. I mean, used on third down. Anyways, Irv Smith Jr. is a huge X factor for this Minnesota Vikings offense, and I want to see him used a lot more going forward. Of course, I've been high on Irv Smith Jr. for a while. We saw some drop passes from Irv Smith Jr., and it's quite unfortunate. It's quite unfortunate to see Irv Smith Jr. drop a few passes, but yesterday played amazing. 4 receptions on 64 yards, used a lot more in this Minnesota Vikings offense. I'm excited to see what Irv Smith Jr. can really do in the NFL. He played great in Alabama, was probably the best player in Alabama. Take Tua Tagovailoa out of the picture. He was the best player on the Alabama offense, and you love to see it for the Minnesota Vikings offense going forward. We're going to see Irv Smith Jr. used a lot more, and I expect big things from Irv Smith Jr. I'm very high on this guy. He's been my breakout player for the year that I have selected to probably break out for the Minnesota Vikings. Of course, we see Eric Wilson and Justin Jefferson right now breaking out. And I made a video of a podcast episode segment where I was talking about players who are ready to break out. And Irv Smith Jr., I talked about for quite a bit. Irv Smith Jr. is ready to break out. Thing is, can he? I mean, he did have a few drop passes, so how many receptions? Because four receptions is really good for a tight end who's very young like Irv Smith Jr. If they can give him, I would say, continue to give him 4 receptions a game, he can be one of the best tight ends in the league going probably in a couple of years. Irv Smith Jr. can be elite. I mean, of course, the ball is always going to Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson, and Adam Thielen, so defenses are designed to stop those 3 guys right there. Irv Smith Jr. is an X factor for the Minnesota Vikings offense. And going forward, I expect to see a lot more receptions from him and more touchdowns. I think he has 1 touchdown in the NFL so far. No, 2. He had 1 against the Raiders, 1 against the Chargers. He had two touchdowns so far. And going forward, Irv Smith Jr., he's going to be one of the best tight ends in the league in 2 years. That's my prediction right now. I do think that he will be. Of course, Kyle Rudolph, he is sitting behind Kyle Rudolph right now, so I don't think he's going to have much of a breakout year right now because, of course, we do have Kyle Rudolph on the roster. But going forward, after this Kyle Rudolph contract is up, I do think Irv Smith Jr. will be our starter and still see a lot of 2 tight end sets. I love 2 tight end sets because you can do a lot of things with them. You can make big plays with them, and if they don't have a great linebacker group like a lot of teams we do play, if they don't have a great linebacker group, you can see big things from them. Irv Smith Jr. can be a slot receiver too. You don't need to line Irv Smith Jr. up as a tight end. You can line him up as a slot wide receiver also because that guy can make catches. That guy can make plays after the catch also. This guy is great, and I want to see big things from Irv Smith Jr. going forward. Let me know what y'all think. Who is the X factor for the Minnesota Vikings team? Honestly, because last year it was clearly CJ Ham. They gave CJ Ham quite a bit of targets last year. We didn't see very much of this year from CJ Ham getting targets, but he was kind of a player that that went under the radar that would still get touchdowns. Anyways, let me know what y'all think.